All right, happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope everyone is having a spectacular week here. Give me some spirit fingers. Make sure you guys are here. You're listening since everybody's muted out. So we have today's Wednesday, and I'm not going to forget today. Today is our Hawaii coaching accountability, which is going to be happening at the end of this call. And last week, someone asked a question kind of in terms of tracking. And for those of you guys that have been a part of this, what we've been doing is on each week, we've been doing accountability. And accountability is one of those things that is, I think, so important towards building a successful business, is being able to set a goal of saying, hey, here's what I'm going to accomplish. Here's what I'm going to execute on. Here's how many points I'm going to get. Here's how many presentations I'm going to do. And then going ahead and following through with that, and then completing that task by the end of the week or by the end of the month, being able to execute on small things so you can expand those into bigger things. And what that really kind of led into was a conversation, because a lot of people saying, okay, I'm going to have this many points by next week. And each week we're reporting in on our goals. Many of you have been participating in this process. We're going to be doing it here shortly at the end of this call. But then it led me back into a thought process that I had, which was kind of a step back onto that, which was tracking. So today's subject, and today I want to talk to you guys about tracking your business. So please write this down, tracking my business. And for some reason why I can't seem to get my Elmo to work. So I'm just going to hold a few things up here to the screen here so you guys can see them. But in tracking your business, and I want you to ask yourself this question: how am I tracking my business? Or what methods am I using in tracking my business? So these are questions I want you to be thinking about. What am I using to track my business? Write this down. The next question is what am I tracking in my business? What am I tracking in my business? This is one of those things where we need to inspect what we expect. And I have found that anything that focus goes, kind of attention goes, focus goes, continues to expand. If you want to, let's say in your finances, if you want to increase your finances, there's certain things you need to be monitoring, certain things you need to be tracking, obviously. If it's in your health, right? There's certain things you need to be monitoring, certain things you need to be tracking. Inside of your business, there's certain things that you need to be tracking, and you need some kind of method or system for tracking these things. But also it made me kind of remember certain things that I did over the course of my career that really helped me in terms of creating consistent results inside of my business and focusing on the right activities of the things that actually mattered, and kind of getting rid of a little bit of the fluff and making sure that I was tracking things that were actually producing results. So what methods are used for tracking? Okay. Now, when I first started tracking, this was before smartphones. This was before apps. This was before any of this stuff. So all tracking that we did was basically done on paper. Right? So the other thing that we were doing is we were tracking our contacts. Tracking our contacts, we had, I called it Fort Knox in a box, because we know that fortune is in the follow-up. And Fort Knox in a box, what it was every new contact that I had that was starting to get what I call in play, what they had was I gave them all an index card. And each of these, you guys remember Rolodexes? You guys remember these? I don't know, it was back in the day. So, but inside of this box, what I ended up having was each person had an index card. And on that, I had their name, I had the date I contacted them, I had whatever exposure was in process with them. And then I had this box and my tracking system for following up with people. So I want to talk to you guys about tracking and following up, but I also want you guys to track on execution and creating some of your results. So I don't know what tracking system you're using. For me, my tracking system that I love is I'm using Rapid Funnel, because it has all my contacts. I can put them in there. It tracks everything for me. Anytime I'm sending an exposure, I know when someone's watching, and all of the activity log is basically in there. So it's a lot of the technology that we use, a lot of the kind of pen and paper. But sometimes I feel like instead of using technology, we're kind of relying on it as a crutch instead of as a tool, and aren't using it to its full advantage because it's kind of a little bit more out of sight, out of mind in some capacity. So I want you to think about, how are you tracking your contacts? How are you tracking your business? obviously in your back office, you have the rank advancement, the rank meter, which tracks your numbers. So luckily, you don't actually have to track your numbers. You can see that in your back office on a daily basis for tracking, okay? But when I was tracking my business in terms of my contacts, every contact I'd have a new card, and inside of this index card box, I had the days of the month and the months of the year. And so what would happen is the front of the box would be today's date, which would be September 23rd, right? And then what would happen is I would move that to October 23rd. So I had like a rolling 30 days in my box. So if I called somebody on September 23rd and they didn't pick up, I would move them a few days back, okay? And how would I move my follow-up phone calls back is I would always double the days. So if I called you today and you didn't pick up, I would put you 2 days back. If I called you in 2 days on the 25th and you didn't pick up, then I would put you 4 days back. If I called you on the 29th and you didn't pick up, I put you 8 days back. And then I would just continue to do this until you picked up or told me no, or not for me, or something like that. So through my follow-up process, I learned these things, and I was really kind of sifting, and this is where I came up with the idea of sorting and using this deck of cards analogy, which many of you guys have seen me do, which was the concept of tracking. Okay, so I'm tracking my potentials. So this is where I want you kind of in thinking about this, was coming up with an idea of going, okay, what is it I'm looking to create in my business? Now, all of us are looking to create results. Yes. How many of you guys want more signups in your business? Show of hands. Yeah. All right. So to have more signups in our business, we need more people that are in a evaluating decision and to make a buying decision. So I want you to think about this. The people that decide to join, they're in the process of deciding whether or not Seacret, deciding whether or not social networking professionals is for them. Would you guys agree with me on that? So they have to have enough information or seen enough information to be in the evaluating process to making what I call a buying decision, or in this case, I would say a joining decision, because they're not really making a buying decision when we're talking about the business. They're making a joining decision. Because making a buying decision is much easier than making a joining decision. You guys get what I mean? Yeah. If you're making a buying decision, you're buying a product and you're getting that product. If you're making a joining decision, it's because you're deciding that you're going to do something with it. All right. At least hopefully. That's our hope when someone makes a joining decision. All right. Now we do know those people that join, and they're professional joiners. And that's what they do. They just, they join. So, and what else do they do? That's it. They just join. They're joiners. So, but in order to get that, what I started doing was tracking. So what happened inside of my business is, what I learned was I had to get enough people that were in this decision-making process that I was following up with. In the beginning, my business was really frustrating. And one of the primary reasons why is because I was relying on 1 or 2 people that were what I call in play. Okay. So I want you to write this down. In play. Who are your people that are in play? Okay. Now, what I heard is if you're spare time, part-time, you want to have at least what we call 10 people that are in play. Now, what do I mean by in play is they're in between yes and they're in between no. They're not a no yet and they're not a yes yet. They haven't said yes. They haven't said no. Now, my kind of mentors told me, he said, Jesse, if you want to be a professional network marketer, you need to learn how to recruit at least 5 to 10 people every single month. And I was like, oh my God, are you like 5 to 10 every month? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, does that seem hard? And I was like, well, yeah, that sounds, that sounds crazy. And I remember in the beginning thinking like, is that even possible? I said, yeah, most people never do it, but most people never make $1 million a year in network marketing. Now, your goals may not be to do that, which is totally fine. I'm not saying, but this is what my mentors were talking to me about. Said, you got to find a way. I said, how do I do that? And they were like, pretty much by any means necessary at that time. I said, well, how do I find that? How do I find that many people? Now, this was before social media. This was before attraction marketing. This is before the ability to be able to kind of build a brand and really advertise to that brand and be able to capture an audience. So, but what I did notice was this, is that if I had about 10 people that were in play, meaning looking at information, evaluating information, okay, what ended up happening was I ended up having an exorbitant amount of energy and focus on the few people that were in play. And what would happen is I would focus and spend a lot of time specifically on people which the majority of them were going to make the decision of no rather than join. You guys know that the majority of people that we expose are not going to say yes. Do you guys know this? I don't know if you guys know this. This might be a shocker to some of you. No, we know that if we go show 10 people, 9 are not saying yes. That's just not the ratio that our business model works off of, right? And it's honestly, it's not something that we would want anyway, because if everybody we introduced said yes, Seacret would have been a game over business a long time ago, and you wouldn't have the opportunity that you have to pioneer something before the masses really got it and understood it, right? So, but when it comes to, I found out if I had 10 people that were in play, and I was working with those 10 people, what I found is that if I had 20 people in play, it didn't actually require any more time to have 20 people in play. What I did was this: I just spent less time with each person, and I really only spent time and started sifting faster. And I found that I got the same ratio of people to join. So let's just say, for an example, that if you have 10 people that are in play, 2 are going to join. Let's just go 80-20 rule, right? So 8 say no, 2 say yes. You guys with me on that? In fact, let's be ultra conservative. Let's say it's 1 out of 10. How many guys are down with that? Yes? Okay. So we got 10 people evaluating information. 9 are going to say no. Now, they don't say no right away. It's going to take a little bit of time. They're going to evaluate. They're going to think, I need to talk to my spouse. I need to think about it. You know, all that jazz that people do, right? So I've got 9 that are evaluating that say no, 1 that evaluates that says join. What I found is when I had 20 people that were in play, let's say in the course of a month, I start the month, and let's say it was cut and dry month to month. This month, I got 10 in play. At the end of the month, it's the 31st, 9 said no, 1 said yes. The next month, I put 20 people in. What I found, it didn't really require any more time. I just spent less time and less energy and less focus with those that were not going to be yeses anyway. That's what I found out. So it really didn't require more time to have 20 in play. Then what I found is having 30 in play, I got the same ratio. So if I had 20 in play, 2 would say yes. If I had 30 in play, 3 would say yes. If I had 40 in play, 4 would say yes, and so on and so forth. So what happened was I really realized, I said, look, if you want to be a consistent recruiter where it seemed almost effortless, it wasn't necessarily about getting better at doing the business. It was just about having more people in play. And here was my number. My goal at that stage of my career was to have 100 people in play, 100 people evaluating information between saying yes and saying no. And what I found was first of all, it was pretty difficult to do in the very beginning. But once I could figure out how to get that many people evaluating information, the psychology of my business drastically changed. And what I mean by that was I was no longer waiting on people that were gonna end up saying no. I didn't have time to wait for the ones that were gonna say no, because there were so many people that were in play evaluating information that what ended up happening was the 20%ers ended up getting back to me, reaching back to me, connecting with me. And I just spent less time, less energy, less emotion on people that weren't end up going to make a joining decision. Now, were there some that fall through the cracks because I wasn't following up as diligently with all 100 of those people? For sure, okay? But what ended up happening was a big thing that changed was my posture. My posture changed dramatically when all of a sudden I'm talking to somebody that's kind of a maybe a sort of, and what would happen is I would say, well, listen, I'm totally down. You let me know when you're ready to get going, because it was kind of like, I have 15 people to call right now that are highly interested in what's going on. So it wasn't like I'm calling this person and please, oh God, be one that says yes. So please, oh God, are you sure? You need to think about it. My posture changed when all of a sudden I had more people that were in play. Now, what does that look like when it comes to your tracking? What does that look like when it comes to your system? So what I want you guys to do is I had whiteboards. And what I had was I had whiteboards in my office, and I'm going to have whiteboards right now. So, and on my whiteboard, I've got different people that I have that are what I call in play of some of my top prospects, and I've got some of my other goals that I have on my board. Now I've got 2 boards here. I've got another 2 boards over here. But back in the day, I had mirrors, okay? And on these, I had these mirrors. And on these mirrors, I basically had dry erase markers, and my mirrors became my tracking system of my board, okay? Now, there were 2 things that I had. I had tracking of all of my potentials, okay? And people that were quote unquote in play. And the reason why this was really valuable for me is because a lot of times, to what I've noticed is when it's stuck in my phone, I don't see it that often. Out of sight, out of mind. But when it was on my board of all the people that I was either thinking about or in play or that were kind of hot prospects of people that were evaluating information. And then when somebody said no or not for me or whatever, I just took them off my board. But I made sure that my board was constantly being filled with people that were in an evaluating decision. So that was number 1. And I want to talk to you guys about that, of what I call potentials, okay? So when we have potentials, okay, how many of you guys know that there's a lot of people that say they're going to join and they don't join? How many of you guys have experienced this, right? So, oh yeah, Friday. Oh yeah, when the money, you know, oh yeah. Thursday, you know, right? You'll get a lot of that. And that's normal. In the beginning, that used to get me very frustrated. The reason why I used to get frustrated, because I used to count people before they'd actually joined. How many guys are like, I got one? And you're like, no, you didn't get one. It's like the fishing, you know, and you're like, oh, I got one. And you pull it out and you're like, no, that's not a fish. That's a boot. So through the tracking system is I put it on my mirror. The second thing that I was tracking was results. And when I was tracking results in my business, is like many of you guys are tracking right now your activity, is what I did was, in the first company that I built, there was a position called executive director. And executive director, you had to have 75 signups each month in a calendar month to qualify for this particular rank. And these 75 signups had to come from 3 separate teams, a minimum of 25 from each team to qualify. So example is if you had 50 signups, and 5 signups, that would be 50, 50, 105 signups. So you'd be over the 75, but you wouldn't qualify. You had to have at least 25, 25, 25. So from 3 legs to qualify. So what I would have on my board is I would have each of my legs, my teams on my board, and how I would write it out was I would write it out like this. I specifically remember doing this now that when we did this training, and I will spare you the time frame on it, but I wrote out on each leg, and I had these boxes. And on my mirror, and they were huge on my mirrors, okay? And I had these huge mirrors because I was a choreographer, a dancer. So I had a whole wall that was basically mirrors for my for dancing. And so what ended up happening was I had team 1 or leg 1 with the leader on the top of it. And every time I got a sign up in that leg, I would cross it off, okay? Now, if I had and then what I'd have is on the side, I had all of my possibles, okay, or potentials, okay, possibles or potentials. And what I would do is I would be filling up this list. Oh yeah, we did a presentation with Samantha, right? She's evaluating. Oh yeah, Ethan was there. We met with Daryl. John said that his cousin's, Beth, she was going to get started. So all of the potentials I was writing on a list on the side. And then every time one would go into the system, I would check it off. So I basically created every month on my whiteboard, my own rank meter, so to speak, right? And on my rank meter, everything was happening over here. But what I really did by doing this and visualizing this and seeing this month in, month out, of looking at it, was the correlation of possibles to actual production. And this was huge for me. Is what it did was it kind of got me out of who's going to get started. What I noticed was, okay, how many possibles, how many people that are evaluating, that are interested, that are excited, do I need to have in order to be sure that I'm going to have 25 boxes checked off by the end of this month in order to qualify for my rank, okay? How many presentations need to happen? What is the activity level? These were things that I started tracking. Now, many of you guys, you're not tracking these numbers as big for your team yet. You will be, and I hope that you will be in the near future. But for many of you guys, what I want you to be thinking about is how are you tracking your activity and how are you tracking the people that are in play? If nothing else, here's what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to pull out a paper. Okay, if you've got nothing else, if you have a whiteboard, if you have a screen, if you have a window in your office that you work out of, right? Because you could just literally go grab a dry erase marker and you can write on your window. I promise you, you can clean it right off if you don't like it. So, but grab a dry erase marker and write on your window. And all I want you to do is I want you to create a list. And this list is people that are in play. Who are your potentials? Who are your possibles? And put them on a list. And start looking and start tracking these methods in order to go out there and execute. What I had found is that I needed to have at least twice as many potentials, okay? Twice as many potentials in order to close on this. So an example is if it was halfway through the month and let's say I had 15 of my 25 I need, I was like, I need 10 more signups. I need 10 more signups in this team in order to complete the 25 for this team. I need 10 more. So I was like, I need at least 20 possibles. I need about 20 potentials in order to get 10. Now, usually the reason why I only needed about half was because there was other things happening in these teams that I might not have known about that would have gone through. But I was like, okay, I got to at least know about at least 20 potentials to make sure that we're going to get 10 that are going to close by the end of the month. Okay. So instead of trying to convince, beg, or force, what I did was I just got the numbers to start working in my favor. So how many people did you have in play? Now, what I thought in the beginning is what seemed to be a lot, okay? In the beginning, it's kind of like lifting weights. If you've never lifted a weight before, when you start lifting weights, you're like, this is really heavy. How am I ever going to get to some bigger weights? But honestly, if you just do it consistently for a couple of weeks, that one weight that seemed very difficult for a couple of weeks, all of a sudden is not that difficult. And then you can start scaling up. So I'm not saying, look, guys, you got to go get 100 people in play by tomorrow or you're not serious about your business. But I want you guys to be able to value out a business. Wouldn't it be nice to have 100 people evaluating information about Seacret, evaluating information about social networking professionals? In today's times, it's much simpler to get 100 people that are looking, evaluating, checking, watching something. But the question is are you really working on what kind of a tracking method that you have to follow up and follow through on these particular groups of people? So how are you tracking your business? How are you monitoring your business? And what I would highly suggest is that you have something visual that you are looking at that has your goals, number one, your goals. And the second thing that it has is it has your business of activity. This is going to hopefully put you in a space of going, okay, am I really doing the business or am I just learning the business? Now, there's nothing wrong with learning our business, but learning our business doesn't pay you. Doing the business does. Learning the business should be speeding up the doing of the business. All we're looking to do here on these calls and these huddles is provide information, direction, motivation. But the activity, if your activity is not going to increase, if you don't have more people in play, these calls are not going to be that beneficial for your business. They may be beneficial for your life. But what we need to see is this, is what is the focus on the activity and reporting in on that activity. And this is where the accountability comes into play. So it's easy to hide if there isn't something that you're reporting in on. And our business, and especially network marketing, because you don't really have a boss. You can do as much as you want, you can do as little as you want, you're unaccountable. And a job, generally speaking, there are things that you are accountable for or you don't get to keep that job. There's things that you got to report in on. There's things that you have to complete. There's things that have to be done week in and week out in order to maintain whatever life or business that you have. So is this making sense? Does anybody have any questions about tracking or potentials or in play? So right now, if you have written down on here of going, okay, how many people do I really have that are in play? And if it's difficult for you to create that list, this is the place to start. This is it. If we want to be increasing your sponsoring, increasing your recruiting, what we need to have is more people that are in play, meaning more people that are in the potential of making a joining and or a buying decision. That's all I want for you guys. I want you to have so many people. Here's what I want. I want you to have so many people in play, you forget about people. You're like, oh my God, I forgot to call Lisa back. Lisa needs to get started. She was really excited. I want that issue for you. That's what we call a champagne problem. How many guys would like to have this problem? Where you have so many people in play that there's so many excited people that you can, it's even difficult to get back to everybody that's excited, right? Instead of spending a lot of energy and a lot of time and a lot of worry about the 6 or 7 that you're like, please, oh God, be somebody that's ready to get started, okay? Is going, no, I just need to put more people in the play, in the system, in the structure, in this. Now, here's the thing. There's a delayed gratification for all of this. I want you guys to understand. This is not, planting and watering. Okay? This is not going to the store and buying the apple. You're growing your orchard. You're growing your harvest. And growing a harvest doesn't happen overnight. For me, it wasn't like it happened overnight. And then over the course of 6 months, over the course of a year of me really focusing on planting seeds, cultivating, me focusing on putting people in play and having more people in play and more people evaluating and following up and getting this, and then finding more people to be able to even put in play. And where do I find those people? And really looking at that. It took a while. And then all of a sudden, I started getting signups. It was like, I would get 1 or 2 a month, 1 or 2 a month, 1 or 2 a month. And then all of a sudden it was like 1 or 2 a week, 1 or 2 a week that would end up joining. And then when I was getting like 1 or 2 a week, everybody would come to me and they were like, oh my God, that's incredible. What are you doing? And that was the question. How are you signing up 1 or 2 people a week? And most people didn't like the answer. The answer was 12 months ago, I started evaluating my tracking process and I started monitoring, tracking, and putting this together. It's like when somebody all of a sudden makes a radical shift, it's that slight edge of those disciplines where we're doing it. So by starting this process of tracking, putting people in play, I just want it to be in front of you. I want you to be seeing it. So it's going to be either blatantly obvious that you're adding, or it's going to be blatantly obvious that you're not. Okay. So anyway, here's a good question. So what was that, Vicky? Do we only add to the list of potentials we have in play? So Vicky, here's what I would highly recommend. And because I haven't really done this tracking process in the same context inside of Seacret, but if I was in your shoes, okay, if I was in most of you, because I know for most of you where you are in your business or where the scope and size of your teams are, is I would have a personal list and I would have one that's left leg and right leg. I would have my legs. Who are the potentials on my left? Who are the potentials on my right? So, and what's going on in my business? Because of course, now some of you guys are focused more on one leg more than the other currently right now. Some of you guys are focused on growing momentum in both your legs. If you're not a Royale and or above, you're really focusing on both of your legs for sure, right? Unless you're in a position where you're higher in the compensation plan. But what you're going to be looking at is this: is going, okay, what are my potentials for my left team? What are my potentials for my right team? And as you start tracking, as you start evaluating, as you start looking at this stuff, I want your mind and your direction to be focused on what really actually creates results in our business. What creates results in our business? People looking at our business and evaluating whether or not they're going to join or not. And I need to move as many people through that process as I can. And then what I want to do is just be more elegant at doing it. In the beginning, when you're moving people through the process, it looks like a little clunky and it's a little funky and you're like, how do I do this? And how do I get this person to get to this level and get to this exposure, talk to this person? Or how do I get them to watch this video? Or how do I follow up with them? And you'll be clunky at that. But then the more that you do it, the more it'll be like, you'll be very zen at it. You'll just be like, yeah, I move people through this process. And that's just what we do, And all of a sudden, what would seem to be clunky and chunky, and you're like, how do I get somebody to do this? And you're just like, yeah, it'll be very fluid for you as you're moving people through the system. And all of a sudden, And people just start signing up, and you're like, oh, okay, this is really cool. People are like, how did you do this? How do you make it look so simple? And the answer is doing it again and again and again. What was once difficult became unconsciously competent. So tracking, put it in front of you. I want you guys to see it. I want you guys to be looking at it. Who's in play, who's not in play, who's a yes, who's a no. And that is our lesson for today. So we are